Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Welcome, everybody, to today's Building My Legacy podcast. I have with me today Gabrielle Matthews. She is a coach who really looks at how do you develop your purpose, your meaning, so that you can do and be who it is that you want to be as you conduct your life, as you do your business, as you dream and look at what your future is going to be. So Gabrielle, if you would just start by telling our audience a little bit about how did you get to this journey and what brought you to the place where you're at today?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I think I'd be remiss if I did not say that life brought me to this journey. I definitely think it is my purpose and my destiny to be a life coach for other young women, such as myself. Young professional women and ambitious women and talented women and creative women that are also leaders in their own right, and who want to be able to use this gift and use their passions and their strengths and their talents for the greater good and to ultimately impact themselves and to ultimately impact their communities and their family to come. So I would definitely say, in hindsight, looking back at it, I think this was meant for me. I never really knew what I wanted to do. I went to college, I went to high school, I did the whole shebang, but nothing ever really fit and made me feel like I was doing what I was meant to do on this earth, because that was what was important to me, doing what I am meant to do. And so I think through life, like I say, a lot of struggles, ups and downs, and life lessons. I'm definitely somebody who learns from my mistakes and my struggles and what I go through. And I think that's supposed to happen, right? Good and bad things happen to us, and the bad doesn't have to affect the good. It's just a matter of what we learn and what we take and the wisdom that we get from that. And so I will definitely say the struggles that I have been through, I've taken as much as I can from those things and I've applied them to my life and let those things help me develop into the person that I want to, instead of rejecting those things. And so, yeah, I think ultimately my life led me to this, and it's beautiful and it's amazing. I love it because it is me completely and totally. It is me using all of my gifts, my strengths. It's my passion. It's what I love to do. And so I think this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, for sure. And I'm excited about it.
So for you, you do a lot of work on helping people find their purpose, their why. Why do they do what they do? So tell me, how do you go about doing that? And why do you start with purpose and why?
Yeah, so it's funny because in normal conversations, it really feels like I'm prying. Like if I am not with a client and I am talking to a stranger or just one of my personal relationships, it feels like I'm prying and I'm trying to dig and get something out of somebody. But that's just because I try to go to the center of things, go to the heart of the matter, because I think that is the simplest way to find your answer, is going straight to the truth. And instead of dealing with all the fluff and the things that are not necessarily relevant, or the things that are not necessarily beneficial, or even the things that are not necessarily true about you, I kind of feel like are not necessarily a waste of time, but it is not the most important. So purpose is not necessarily the first thing that I go to with my client. We start at mindset first to see, what even do you think about yourself and what even do you think about your life? Because I know that that's where a lot of that's our brain, and that is where our hard drive is, and that's where we make most of our decisions. So I start with the mind and then I go to the heart. And I think it's supposed, like 1 + 1 = 2. So I start with the mind and I go to the heart, because when those two things are in tandem and when those two things are aligned, it is a lot easier and a lot simpler to have success. So with those two things combined, we make leaps and bounds, I will say. We're able to skip over the small stuff and make leaps and bounds in our development.
Do you have a process you take people through, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, so my process, I call it the butterfly transformation. The reason I call it that is because there's a very clear transformation that you go through. And so the caterpillar stage, like I like to call it, is the mindset part. And we're figuring out who you are now and who do you want to be. We go straight to the source and we figure out what are these negative thoughts, behaviors, and beliefs that you tell yourself or that you have right now that is holding you back from achieving the things that you want to achieve. We spend a lot of the time in the caterpillar stage, just as the caterpillar would, because that is the foundation. And so when we get rid of all of the negative things, we begin to fill it back up with beautiful things. And we tell ourselves authentic, empowering, true things about ourselves. We pull out our talents, our gifts, and our strengths, because unfortunately, not everybody knows what they're good at. Not everybody knows what they love. Not everybody knows what sets their heart on fire. So then we get to that part and we figure out, what is it that you love to do so much? And a lot of times they get to things that they never would have expected. I didn't know that that was my passion. Well, then we go to the chrysalis phase, which is where we do a lot of the work. And we're now translating these strengths and these talents into a potential business. How can this talent and this gift and this passion that you have, how can this positively impact your community? How can it serve your community? How can it help you lead yourself? And how can it help you lead your community, right? When we do those things, it makes it a lot easier for everyone else to trust and everyone else to follow. And it makes it a lot easier to build something big because you're going into something that is authentic and real and true for yourself. And when we operate in our passions, it's a lot easier to overcome our challenges and our battles. So that's why it's important for me that I find what makes a person passionate and what sets your heart on fire, because I believe that path, the one with the least resistance, is the one that will get you to the most success and get you to this success in a quicker way, because you're operating in something that is good for you and that you love. And then the final stage is the adult butterfly stage. And that is when we get to be who we are now. We get to experience our dreams, or at least the beginning of our dreams, because we have so many. A lot of my clients dream very big. And usually every day they're adding new dreams to their dreams, and it overwhelms them. It tends to overwhelm them. But when we get to that adult phase, we get to celebrate now who we are now. And we get to celebrate being able to live these dreams and being at the beginning of these dreams and letting these dreams actualize themselves into something real. Like, it doesn't have to just live in your head. It can be your reality. And so we celebrate and we reflect on what we did that got us here, so that as we continue to grow personally and professionally, we can use those things that we learn to help us overcome future obstacles. So it's definitely a big mix of personal and professional development for sure.
So who do you work with? Who's your target market, Gabrielle?
Yeah, so my target market is young professional women right now. When I say young, I say between the ages of like 18 and 36. Okay. That's who I specialize with. I have been blessed to know that I can impact all kinds of people, but I am focusing on young professional women who have their own talents and their own creative abilities, who want to lead something of their own.
Right. And they have big dreams often, don't they?
Oh my gosh. Yes. They dream very big and new dreams every day. And it discourages them. But I try to get them to see the glass as half full and let them know, like, this is something that can be real for you.
It can be real. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gabrielle, when you think about that, as I'm listening to you, I think so much of us, when we think about building a legacy, it's all about purpose. It's completing our life with a purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And so talk a little bit about that, how purpose helps us get started, but then how it also completes us.
I love that. That's a good question. Well, purpose has always been important to me because I've always felt like life is more than our achievements, and life is more than our successes. And life is more than the materialistic things that we gain, like money. And I believe it's more about fulfillment. And I think it's more about happiness. And I think it is more about how you impact the people around you so that people can be greater than what they are. I believe that when people operate in those things, they have their life is more full. And if you want me to be really honest as to one of the things that made me had a really big interest in purpose was a couple years ago, a childhood hero, Robin Williams, took his life. And the whole world was mourning for him. And I was so shocked. Obviously, we don't know what goes on in people's lives. But I was like, how can a person who has made it to be so successful and so well known and to have so much material wealth and success, how can they take their own life? I thought that that's what life was about your success and getting to where people say you're supposed to be. But that's what made me realize that life is not at all about that. Life is about what your life is about. And so I wondered, like, maybe somewhere in his life, he didn't feel fulfilled, or he didn't feel like he was walking in his purpose. I obviously don't know, but that definitely took me down a path of like, okay, life is so much more than wealth and material gain. It really is about being who you are truly, and doing what you truly want. And I think that makes it hard for people when their parents make them do this and do this and do this. I think that's why a lot of people have mental health issues. And a lot of people are unhappy because I don't feel like a lot of people are being true to themselves, right? I think it's really easy to be true to yourself when you're walking in your purpose. I think those two things are in tandem. So I feel like that is the ultimate sign of like happiness is when you're able to freely be who you want to be unapologetically, and you have a community of people that support that and who love that. And who want to let that flourish. I think that is what life is about. And I think when we walk in the thing that fulfills us, it makes us feel like I have a reason. I have a reason to be here. I have meaning. I have impact. I think that's when people really start to feel like they're living, is when they can let themselves benefit other people, for sure.
They know they were born for a reason, and they can live that purpose, that reason. Boy, that's so huge, so huge. I remember when I was a young kid growing up, I lived in a dormitory, and so away from home. So every 6 weeks or so, we would go home for a day and a half. And the other kids in the school all came from very wealthy families, and not like ours. And they were used to traveling all over the world for their holidays. They would go to different countries to buy material, have a dress made for the prom or whatever. So it was a lifestyle that was extraordinary. But what was interesting about it was I was about 13 at the time. We were getting ready. It was one of the weeks that we were going to go home. And of course, everybody at school knew we were going home because we all arrived at school with luggage that day. And we hauled our luggage to the train station, and then we get on the train, and then we go home 5 hours, and then, we repeat the journey back. So she said, "Isn't this about the time that you should be going home again?" And I said, "Yes." And I didn't really know this person. There were only 40 people in my class, but our lifestyle was quite different. So we didn't really know a lot of the people. And she said, "Can I come home with you?" And I said, "Wow. I don't know. I have to ask my father." So I called my father, and he said, "Well, ask her first of all why she wants to come to our house, because we don't have servants and we live rather humbly. And so she may not be prepared for how we live." So I went back to school, and I said, "My father says you can come, but he'd like to know why you want to come." And she said, "Well, I think before I graduate from high school, I want to have experienced once a family where there's love." And she said, "I think your family must have that." So, isn't that amazing? So here she was. She had traveled all over the world. She could buy anything she wanted, do anything she wanted, except she couldn't buy happiness or love.
I have chills. I have chills. Exactly. You're exactly right. That is important. Most important. Wow.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time chasing what we think is going to make us happy. And then we get it and we say, not enough. we need more because it wasn't enough, right?
Exactly. It wasn't enough, or it wasn't even really the thing that you wanted.
Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes we don't know that. We don't know. And I think we need people to help us realize that. I think, like you said, collaboration is extremely important. Community is important. People around you are important to help you in so many ways, not just externally, but internally, help you with your characteristics and help you with your personal development and help you realize things that you don't realize about yourself. So, wow.
Gabrielle, what are some of the biggest challenges that you think your clients have when they come to you? What do they have to work on the most?
Oh my gosh. So I would say one of the biggest challenges they have is a fear of failure.
Oh,
And and the fear that they will be the reason that they fail. The fear that their own insecurities and their own self-doubt is the reason they failed, as opposed to I failed because I made a mistake. That's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about my own insecurities and my own self-doubt is going to be the reason why I never achieve this dream that I achieved. So they have a very, very big fear of failure that kind of just plays into itself, because what it does is it, of course, makes them more insecure and makes them makes them doubt themselves, because these dreams that they have are so big and they don't feel capable. A lot of them, because my transformation is ideally turning somebody into a business owner, right? A leader in your own way. And so where we start off is not a business owner. And we start off as somebody who's very confused, afraid, lonely, self-doubt. And so there's a lot that we're dealing with here. And so once they have that insecurity and the self-doubt, then they have mental overload. Then they start thinking about all these different things and they have no clarity and there's disorganization and it creates more fear, which just goes back to the fear of failure. So it's just a cycle that they put themselves in. And I would definitely say at the root of that is the fear that their own insecurities is going to be the reason why they don't achieve the dreams that they achieve. So it's definitely about telling yourself something different. That's why we definitely have to go to the mind first, so we can tell ourselves something different, right? Like, I believe that you have these dreams and what you see because you are supposed to achieve that thing. You are supposed to live that thing. That thing is supposed to be real. That's why the dream was given to you, right? That's why it was put into your head in the first place. So I try to empower them and let them see it that way. Like, I didn't have that dream. This person didn't have that dream. You had that dream. So obviously you are fully able and capable of carrying this dream out into fruition. Instead of letting this really big dream scare them and paralyze them is what it really does. It paralyzes them and it almost gets them to do nothing at all. And so they spend a lot of time with regret and just fear and walking with their dreams on one side of their head and then their fears on the other side. And so we're trying to declutter all of that.
So for you, as people go on this journey, biggest mistakes they make, where do they suffer in terms of trying to navigate this?
Honestly, I think, I hope this doesn't sound bad, but I think they suffer most with their mentality, which is why we spend the mindset, which is why we spend so much time in the caterpillar phase, because what they've been telling themselves this for 25 years, 30 years, 22 years. And so it almost doesn't matter what new empowering thing they find out about themselves, because they go right back to what they've been telling themselves for 27 years. And so I definitely think that mental trap is the biggest thing that they deal with. Once they're out of that mental trap, it is like a rocket takes off. They have so much momentum. Once they are empowered and we get to the chrysalis phase, once they are empowered and they realize that what they have can actually be turned into something big and impactful, it's a 180. It really is a 180 from the person that I start with. And when we get into the middle, into that chrysalis phase, it's a 180 because they now believe they believe something different about themselves. So I definitely would say the mindset is definitely the biggest thing for them.
Isn't that so true? It's what we put, those messages, those stories we put in our brain.
Oh, yes.
Sometimes a small story that somebody said, and for whatever reason, it grew and grew and grew.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me why those big stories, the good stories, never grow as good as the bad stories. Like, why? I just never understand why we can't be completely and totally empowered by the great things that we do instead of like completely and totally knocked down by the mistakes that we make. It's like, it makes me think of the person, like you can tell somebody yes a million times. As soon as you say no, they'll remember the time that you said no, right? Or you can tell them no a million times, but as soon as you say yes, they'll remember the time that, they'll remember the time that you say yes. So it's just interesting to me that those positive things don't have a big enough effect on us.
You can never say things enough to people. And it was interesting because I was in Hong Kong and doing some work, and one of my distributors, his manager in Hong Kong, was taking on some responsibility for me. And so I thanked her. She would do something, I'd thank her again, and she'd do something, I'd thank her again. She'd say, "Why do you thank me?" And I said, "Because I'm grateful for what you do." She said, "You don't have to thank me. This is my job. I'm supposed to do this." And I said, "I understand it's your job, and I am still very grateful that you do it so willingly and so beautifully." And it was, so I think sometimes we don't want to let in those messages because of what we think is appropriate or not appropriate, right? So it's at so many levels, Gabrielle, that we have to do reorganizing of that brain, reframing of that brain to make it be who we need it to be.
Yes, absolutely. To let the truth reveal itself, to let the truth about you reveal itself.
Gabrielle, we have been talking for 25 minutes and our time's almost up. Just want to ask, is there something we have left out, something you're passionate about that we should make sure we cover? What might that be?
Well, I just want to remind the listeners, I kind of already hit on this, but I want to remind them that if you can see it in your head, you can hold it in your hand.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I want them to know that your dreams are given to you for a reason. Don't let them go to the grave with you. Don't let your dreams die with you. This is your chance. This is your chance to live your dream, and your dream is beautiful. Your dream is worth it. Just say yes to yourself and say yes to the process. And know that you can have great success. I don't believe anybody's life has to be anything less than great. And your life can be great too. I know you're looking left and you're looking right at people who have greatness and you're wondering why you don't have it. And I'm telling you, your life can be great. And the simplest way to get there is through your talents, your gifts, and your passions. So think about what sets your heart on fire. Think about what truly sets your heart on fire, and you can begin living the life that you see yourself living.
That's beautiful. Gabrielle, thank you so much for being with us. And for those of you who are with us, we will have information about Gabrielle in our show notes so you can get in contact with her. And if you need some additional help getting in contact with her, just let us know. We'll be glad to make that connection for you. And please remember to visit us at www.buildtomorrow.com and all of our social media channels, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn at buildtomorrow.com. Thank you so much for listening to Building My Legacy podcast. And Gabrielle, thank you for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. It was an honor. Thank you so much, Lois.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.